The host stand was a ship's prow in a sea of Friday noise, glassware chiming, forks drumming, the hiss of onions on a flat top. Leo signed to Marisol with quick, neat hands. "Wait table, 15 minutes." She nodded and smiled, the way she always smiled when they turned an ordinary errand into a quiet duet. The hostess smiled back, tight, automatic, and leaned on the mic. "Two, name," she said, enunciating large as if volume were a bridge. Leo cupped a hand to his ear and pointed to his eyes, then signed, "Def, right?" and lifted his phone, notes app open. The smile cracked. We don't have anyone who can interpret. Policy says—" The words tripped over each other and hit the floor. A man in a polo 2 places back pivoted, interested. Somewhere behind the bar, someone laughed at something else and the sound pinballed across tile until it landed at the host stand like a dare. "Sir?" The hostess tried again, clinging to a script. "We can't safely seat you if we can't communicate emergencies." Marisol's jaw set. She pulled a pen from her bag with the precision of a scalpel and wrote on the back of a receipt, "We can read, we can write, we can point." She slid it across the podium. "Let me get a manager," the hostess muttered, as if there was only one right answer and she wasn't allowed to say it. 3 blocks away, a general manager carrying 2 sleeves of printer paper and a plastic tub of menus jogged across a crosswalk toward the restaurant's back door. Avery Chen's phone was buzzing with the familiar hell of Friday. 2 cooks out sick, a party of 12 now 20, and the espresso machine steaming like a dragon with opinions. Avery rounded the corner, paused at the alley door and exhaled the breath that turns chaos into triage. Then the text came, from a bartender they trusted. Host arguing deaf couple. Derek said, "Policy. Pals hurry." Avery was already moving before the period landed. "If this hits you, don't scroll. Like to boost, share with anyone who's worked front of house, and comment. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? Your answers help Part 2 reach the people who need it." The host stand's countertop was worn smooth by thousands of elbows, first dates, last fights, birthday confetti. Tonight, it felt like a line drawn with a ruler. The assistant manager, Derek, had arrived with a binder and a frown, the sacred objects of the mildly powerful. He planted the binder like a flag and frowned harder at the receipt in his hand. "Ma'am, sir," Derek said, slow and careful, as if choosing caution would subtract offense. "We can't seat you. It's a safety thing. In case of a kitchen fire or if there's an allergy or if the server needs to explain," Marisol wrote, "We have eaten before," then underlined it, twice. Leo typed, "We have our phones. We can read lips some. We can write. Seat us near an aisle. We'll watch staff." If alarm lights flash, he turned the screen and held it steady. Derek skimmed and shook his head. "It's not about you," he said, and managed to pack a lot of you into the word not. A woman waiting nearby spoke up, voice bright with that brave anger that arrives when bystanders get tired of watching. "They're offering solutions. Seat them." "It's policy," Derek repeated, relieved to have a word he could hide in. "We can't accommodate." Marisol inhaled hard through her nose, glanced at Leo, and signed tight and low so no one else would read her face. "Fight or leave." Leo's fingers flickered. "Not today. Hungry." Then softer. "Tired." They began to turn. A phone lifted, someone recording. The hostess stared at the screen of her tablet as if it might generate a spine. The kitchen window clanged. "Order in!" The world kept being the world. It always did. "Hey!" a voice called from behind the host stand. "What's happening?" Avery stepped into the light, hair tied back, sleeves rolled, the look of someone who has put out so many fires they learn to love the smell of smoke only when it signals the end. The faces at the stand swiveled toward them like flowers towards sun or gossip. Derek straightened, already composing his explanation. "We have a situation," he said quickly, with a leader's cadence borrowed from television. "This couple needs an interpreter. We don't have one. Policy says—" Avery didn't look at Derek. They looked at Leo and Marisol and, without theatrics, without apology, simply and cleanly, signed, "Hi, I'm Avery. I sign. Sorry, long day. We'll fix." Table now. Shock rearranged the geometry of the host stand. Marisol's eyes filled before she could decide whether to let them. Leo's shoulders dropped like someone had taken off his backpack, the invisible one people carry in public spaces, built without them in mind. Avery turned to the hostess. "Two top by the window now." Then to Derek, voice still quiet. "My office after I seat them." Derek blinked, fumbled a nod, and clutched his binder as if it could bite him. Avery swiveled back to the couple, switched to signing, and a rhythm that matched their breath. "Near window, good light. Server knows basic signs. If mistake, we write, okay?" "Okay," Leo signed, relief making his hands looser. "Thank you." They followed Avery through the maze of tables. The world around them adjusted, a busser stepping back, a server tucking in a chair, heads tilting at the hush that accompanies the moment a room realizes it's being watched by its own conscience. At the table, Avery pulled out chairs, laid down menus, and signed an opening sentence that softened every edge within reach. "You are welcome here, not charity, customer." Marisol laughed through her nose, unpretty, honest. She tapped the menu with her pen. "What's good?" Avery grinned, the tightness in their jaw releasing. "Fish special, also fries." Always fries. They left the couple to the precious privacy of ordering and strode back to the host stand. The hostess exhaled so hard a strand of hair lifted from her forehead. "Derek," Avery said. "Office." In the small room off the bar, where posters of brand promotions curled at the corners and a dry erase board threatened morale with shift shortages, Avery shut the door and didn't sit. "You used the word policy," they said. "Show me." Derek handed over the binder as if handing over evidence exculpated the hand that used it. "Section 14, Safety Protocol, Communication." Avery flipped and read. The policy required reasonable ability to communicate emergency procedures, documentation for allergy management, and a plan when standard verbal explanation isn't possible. It did not say refuse service. It said have a plan. "This doesn't say what you made it say," Avery said. "Put the binder down. Look at me." Derek looked. His face did that thing faces do when a person has to decide whether to double down or get small enough to fit back into the team he almost stepped out of. "I've been here a long time," he said, defensive turning into penitent with embarrassing speed. "We've never had—" "You've had," Avery interrupted. "You just didn't see." He flinched. "I thought—" He swallowed. "I thought if something went wrong and we couldn't tell them. Reduce liability." "Liability is when you break the law," Avery said, not unkind. "What you almost did is break the law." They let it land. "Also, the part where we're human." Derek's shoulders sagged. "I'm sorry." "Apologize to them," Avery said. "And to the hosts. And to yourself when you go home tonight and you think about how this would feel if it happened to you." They held his gaze a breath longer. "Then help me put a plan in place so you never reach for that word again as a shield." Derek nodded. "What's the plan?" "Tonight, paper, pens, our communication kit at the stand. Simple ASL cards for high water menu, thanks. Seat by good light, server with patience." Avery's fingers were counting the list, the way they counted steps from line to expo to table on nights when a dining room wanted to get away from them. "Tomorrow, training, permanent kits, flashing light tie-in for the alarm, braille menus, website update, applications open for deaf and hard-of-hearing staff, and call our lawyer to codify it so you can hold a binder and tell the truth next time." Derek looked at the ground. "I can do that," he said, the words small and clean. "Good," Avery said. "Now go fill 2 water glasses and don't spill them." Back at the table, Leo and Marisol pointed and scribbled and signed, and the server, Tasha, who loved her job because it let her memorize the ways people hold hunger and turn it into care, signed back with a handful of cheerfully imperfect words. "Hello, water, fish, fries, thank you." Her hands made mistakes, and her face apologized before her mouth could. She switched to writing when needed, to pointing, to that universal miming of delicious, hands near cheeks, eyes wide, a little bounce. The fish special arrived hot. The fries arrived louder. The world briefly got out of their way. Still, the story at the host stand had leaked into the room. A man in a polo whispered to his date. A woman at the bar scrolled her phone and displayed a face honed to be outraged on schedule. The bartender who had texted Avery shot them a look. "You okay?" Avery nodded, the kind of nod managers give in the middle of a rush that means keep going. We are not broken. We'll talk later. When the first plates were cleared, Avery returned to Leo and Marisol's table. "Taste good?" "Perfect," Marisol signed. Then, what happened to us at stand? Avery could have told the story in a way that made them a hero. Instead, they told the truth like a recipe. "Manager misread policy. We fix. Train tomorrow. Sorry." They added, "Because dignity has texture. Your patience, not obligation. Thank you." Leo signed, "We came hungry. We stay because you see us." He tapped the table. "Does no charity, and no charity," Avery confirmed. Guessed. They comped dessert not as penance but as punctuation. When the couple left, they raised their hands in silent applause, the deaf equivalent of clapping, fingers wiggling like light. At the host stand, Derek stood next to the hostess with 2 laminated cards Avery had made in 15 chaotic minutes. "We sign a little. Please write or point and you are welcome here." He signed, "Sorry," hand closed to a fist, rubbed in circles over his heart, awkwardly, earnestly. Leo nodded, accepted, and wrote one more word on the receipt before leaving it on the podium. "Thanks." The Friday night press resumed. It always did. But now the room hummed in a slightly different key. Training began at 9 the next morning, because most restaurant training begins at 9. Early enough to steal the day's calm, late enough that no one has to pretend they slept. Avery rolled the mop bucket aside and tuned the TV to the HDMI input, where a slide deck waited. First slide a photo of the laminated cards at the host stand. Second slide the words, "Communication is hospitality." "Okay," Avery said. "Rule 1, we don't narrate people's capabilities. We ask, we offer, we adapt. Rule 2, we don't use policy to cover fear or laziness. Rule 3, we do the simple things first. Paper, pen, light, patience." They paused. "Rule 4, we practice." Tasha raised a hand. "Can we learn to sign specials and allergy and check at least?" Avery grinned. "Yes. And fries. Always fries." They started with finger spelling. A through Z, the hand shapes that turn names into something you can hold. They practiced thank you, palm from chin forward. Please, flat hand circles on chest. Water, W hand at chin. Bill, writing motion. Allergies, a sign borrowed and retooled, hand twisting at nose then moving away, paired with writing. They practiced sorry without melodrama, wait with patience built in and welcome like they meant it. Avery explained why facial expression was grammar in ASL, not decoration, and that writing things down wasn't condescension, it was a technology. They showed a video of a deaf chef talking about kitchen safety with an interpreter. They showed a photo of a strobe alarm tied into an emergency light. They showed the clip from the ADA training everyone pretends to watch, and then talked about how to turn policy into person-to-person plans. Derek sat front row. He took notes like a man about to take a test he wished he'd studied for yesterday. When Avery asked for a volunteer to role-play a host scenario with a deaf couple, he stood first. "I want to do it wrong, then right," he said, voice steady, face red. "Let's do it right first," Avery said, smiling. They knew how shame could backfire into stubborn myths. "Then we'll troubleshoot." They crafted the communication kits. A slim clipboard, thick pens, pre-printed cards with icons. Water, menu, bathroom, bar, patio, allergy, spicy, check. A small flashlight for dim corners. A laminated map of the dining room to point at preferred seating. They made sure the fire alarm tie-in actually flashed. Maintenance had to be bribed with pie, which was fine because maintenance deserves pie. Avery sent a late morning email to the mailing list and posted an update to the restaurant's site. "We're building better ways to welcome deaf and hard-of-hearing guests." The post didn't congratulate the restaurant. It thanked the community for patience and promised specifics. Kits at the host stand, staff training, an open invitation to feedback. They added a line in Spanish because half their regulars' grandmothers read better that way, and a line in plain language because policy dressed fancy sometimes forgets who it's for. At noon, the door swung open, and Ms. Ortiz from the bookstore down the block rolled in a cart with a stack of slim books, ASL phrases for service workers, the deaf community, a primer, and a kid's picture book about sign language with bright illustrations and gentle humor. "You said community table," she said. "I started community shelf." "Invoice me," Avery said. "It's a donation," she replied. "Invoice my heart if you must." At 3, the electrician arrived to run one more cable to a light so the strobe would be visible from every corner. At 4, Avery sent staff home for a nap and came back at 5 to face another Friday, now with an extra tool. By 7, Word had done what Word does. Another deaf couple arrived. The host didn't perform. She didn't point to the kit like a trophy. She lifted a clipboard, wrote, "Welcome, table for 2, and paired it with "Welcome" in shy, careful signing. The couple beamed. The first moment was dignified, the rest of the night followed. Mid-service, a man at the bar in a corporate polo, different guy, same vibe, complained loudly to no one in particular that accommodations were ruining service for paying customers. The bartender, who had texted Avery the night before, put down a martini and raised an eyebrow. "Everyone here is a paying customer," she said, "and you're paying extra to watch us get better. Lucky you." He shut up. It helps when a sentence fits in a tip jar. At 9, Leo and Marisol walked in again, arms linked, moved by that complicated urge people have to revisit the scene of the almost hurt and rewrite it. The hostess smiled for real this time and touched 2 fingers to her lips, then out. "Thank you." She wrote, "We saved your table," and pointed to the window like a small magic trick. Marisol signed, "We brought friends." 2 more people stepped in, older, a little wary, holding the evening like a glass too close to a sink. The hostess added 2 chairs without asking a manager, because sometimes hospitality fits between a policy and a reaching hand. Avery stopped by with bowls of olives and a joke about how the fries were beginning to believe they were the main course. They signed, "Glad you came back," with shoulders relaxed, eyebrows up, the grammar of sincerity clear. "We came back for fries," Leo lied cheerfully, then more serious, "for you." In a rare lull, Avery took Derek aside. "How are you?" "Grateful this place teaches fast," he said, "and ashamed still." "Keep the grateful," Avery said. "Lose the ashamed. Replace it with responsible. Then go run the pass. We're in the weeds." They were, in that lovely way. A restaurant is in the weeds when it's a good night. Too many bodies to feed. Too many plates in the window, too much laughter swelling between the clinks and the calls. It felt like belonging. When the night ended, the staff sat for family meal over too much pasta and just enough salad to call it balance. Tasha tried to sign "good job" to the dishwasher, who laughed and corrected her gently. Derek practiced "sorry" on his chest, then replaced it with "thank you," a lesson embedded in muscle memory. Avery sat with their back to the office door and let their shoulders drop 1/2 inch, the way leaders do when the thing they feared has been replaced with a thing they can build on. "Tomorrow," Avery said, "we try it again." The restaurant did not turn into a fairy tale. It did what good restaurants do. It made a habit of its best impulses and gave them a station on the line. They hired 2 deaf hosts within a month, Kayla, whose smile stopped arguments at 10 feet, and Luis, who could fingerspell a reservation name faster than most people can say it. Training shifted from a one-off to a cadence. Twice monthly ASL practice, tabletop role-plays, videos from deaf creators queued up between how-tos on deglazing pans and resetting printers. The laminated cards got prettier and more durable. The website added a clear notice: deaf-friendly, ASL basic, communication kits at host stand, visual alarm system installed. Reservations surged in a way that felt less like a wave and more like a tide changing. Avery did paperwork no one posts on Instagram. They updated the employee handbook, wrote scripts that weren't scripts so much as tone guides, talked to the fire marshal about strobe light code, wrangled a small grant from the city for accessibility upgrades, booked a 3-hour workshop with a deaf rights organization that believed in calling people in rather than out. There were failures. A brunch server defaulted to shouting at a hard-of-hearing elder and had to be coached carefully back to the idea that volume is not the same as clarity. A new host placed a deaf party by the speaker because she forgot to see sound the way some people forget to see steps. A post went up on a neighborhood group with a sideways jab about special treatment, and Avery typed, deleted, and retyped 7 replies before landing on a simple truth. Fairness is not sameness. We change how we serve so everyone can be served. Fries for all. It traveled farther than the jab. The kitchen learned too. The expediter started placing allergy tickets with a bright sticker rather than a highlighter because colorblind cooks exist. The line built a habit of pointing and repeating back orders to each other when the rail got loud, which accidentally reduced mistakes for hearing guests as well. Invisible ramps for everyone. Somewhere in the second month, the restaurant hosted a silent hour. Not silent exactly, but held with the intention of honoring time without shouting. Phones stayed in pockets. Servers signed more than they spoke. Music went down. Light went warm. The door sign said, in English and ASL, slow, stay, see. People cried. Not because they were moved by their goodness, because the room offered them a new way to be with strangers, and it felt like something they hadn't known they were missing. Leo and Marisol became regulars. They arrived together and with friends. Sometimes they came alone with books. They started sitting at the corner two-top, where the light was best for reading faces, and the traffic created a visual hum they both liked. They learned the staff's names in the way deaf people learn names, in the hands and face and how a person holds a tray. They taught the room their sign names, Tasha's T hand flicked like a fry, Derek's D drawn near the heart. For apology, Leo teased. Avery's A tapped at the eyebrow because of a little scar there from a childhood bicycle. On a Tuesday in late spring, Marisol arrived early, carrying a tote bag full of markers and small tent cards cut from heavy paper. She set up at the community table with Ms. Ortiz from the bookstore and Kayla from the host stand. They wrote the ASL alphabet on cards and scotch-taped them along the window like flags. They wrote phrases in block letters: water, please, allergies, check, thank you, have a good night. The cards were for a new hire class, but guests drifted by and learned to say thank you with their hands, and the room tilted in a tiny, measurable way. That night, the assistant fire marshal came in for dinner. Someone had told him about the strobes, and he wanted to see them. He laughed softly when the lights pulsed for 2 seconds. As a test, and half the room lifted their hands to clap without sound, a reflex that had become part of the room's grammar. Looks good, he said. Tastes better. He ordered the fish special. And fries. Later, Avery stood with Derek at the edge of the line watching the pass hum. Do you remember that first night? Derek asked quietly. I do, Avery said. I don't, Derek said, surprising himself. I mean, I remember it, but it feels like it happened in a restaurant I used to work at before I worked here. That's the point, Avery said. We don't get extra credit for learning to be decent. We get a better room. He nodded, then cautiously, You sign so effortlessly. Where did you learn? Avery smiled. My little brother. He taught me when we were kids. He said I ran too fast and missed half of what he was saying, so he gave me a way to listen with my eyes. They shrugged. Later, an X. Later, a class. I keep learning. You saved me from myself, Derek said, not looking at them. You saved yourself, Avery said, looking straight at him. At 9, Leo and Marisol came in with a group of 6. Their book club, judging by the tote bags and the way they all read dessert menus as if they were blurbs. Avery brought them a plate of something the line called accidentally perfect, crispy ends of roast potatoes kissed by aioli, and signed on the house Chef Extra. Marisol signed back a quick sentence that made Avery bite their lip to keep from crying. First time, a restaurant feels like our restaurant. Good, Avery signed. Your table. The phone on the host stand pinged. Avery's social post had gone up. Comments stacked. Cooks and servers tagging each other. Deaf folks tagging deaf folks. Neighbors tagging neighbors. The top comment was from a woman in another city, time-stamped 2:03 a.m. Watching from Karachi, can't sleep, it's 2 a.m. This made me want fries and to learn thank you properly. The room did that thing rooms do when they become a little more than the sum of receipts and plates and tips. It made a shape, You could almost live inside. At closing, Avery flipped the sign and leaned against the door for a second, listening to the dish pit sing its last watery song. In the kitchen, the night crew packed sauces and labelled Cambros. At the bar, someone counted the till. At the community table, the ASL alphabet cards hung crooked and beautiful. Leo and Marisol lingered at the threshold. They lifted their hands and wiggled their fingers. Thank you without needing the words. Avery lifted their hands too, and the three of them stood there for one beat longer than strangers usually do, tracing the outline of a place that had remembered what it was for. On the way home, Avery passed a bus shelter where an ad promised inclusion in big, clean font. They smiled, tired and wired. Inclusion wasn't a font. It was a Friday night when the fries went out hot, the lights flashed when they were supposed to, and a couple who had been told not today the night before came back to write a different ending. They checked their phone. More comments, more cities, more times. Where and what time are you? Los Angeles, 7:12 p.m. Lagos, 1:12 a.m. Manila, 10:12 a.m. A map made of people awake for all kinds of reasons, all reading the same small story about a room that learned to see. Avery slid the phone into a pocket and walked, the night thick with summer and the faint scent of onions and soap. Tomorrow the printer would jam, a server would no-show, a fryer would cough, someone would ask for a substitution that made the chef sigh. Tomorrow there would be work. And tomorrow, when a guest walked in and pointed to their ear and then to their eyes, someone at the host stand would lift a pen and a card and a hand, and the room would make space for their hunger to be ordinary, which, in the end, is what all of this is for.